Here's a useful expression I use all the time. Every now and then. It means occasionally or from time to time. For example, if I were talking about a habit, I might say, I go for a walk every now and then. This means I don't go regularly, but I do it sometimes. Or if I were describing something I enjoy but don't do often, I could say, I watch old movies every now and then. It's a natural way to talk about something that happens occasionally. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you common English expressions that I use all the time and that native English speakers use without thinking about them. I'll give you a simple meaning and a few example sentences so you can start to use them right away. Next expression, out of the blue. Out of the blue. This means unexpectedly or without warning. For example, if you receive surprising news, you might say, she called me out of the blue. This means her call was completely unexpected. Or if something surprising happens at work, you could say, the opportunity came out of the blue. Here's our next expression. On the same page. This means to agree or to have the same understanding. For example, before starting a project, you might say, let's make sure we're on the same page. Or after a discussion, you could say, we're finally on the same page about the plan. Here's our next one. As easy as pie. As easy as pie. This means something is very easy. For example, if a test was simple, you might say, the exam was easy as pie. Or if someone is nervous about trying something new, you could say, don't worry, it'll be as easy as pie. Feeling run down. This means feeling tired, weak, or slightly unwell. For example, if you're not feeling your best, you might say, I've been feeling a bit run down lately. Or if a coworker seems exhausted, you could say, she's feeling run down and needs some rest. If you're working towards advanced fluency and need a little extra help, check the link in the description for how we can help you. In a tight spot. This means being in a difficult or troublesome situation. For example, if someone is facing a challenge at work, you might say he found himself in a tight spot during the meeting. Or if a friend needs help, you could say she's in a tight spot and could really use some support. Here's our next one. It's your move. It's your move. This means it's your turn to make a decision or take action. For example, after presenting an offer, you might say, I've shared all the details, now it's your move. Or if you're waiting for someone to respond, you could say, I've done everything I can, it's your move. Hit the nail on the head. Hit the nail on the head. This means to describe something exactly right. For example, if someone makes an accurate observation, you might say, you hit the nail on the head. Or after hearing a correct explanation, you could say, she really hit the nail on the head. Here's our next expression. In the blink of an eye. This means very quickly. For example, if time passes quickly, you might say, the weekend went by in the blink of an eye. Or if something changes suddenly, you could say, everything changed in the blink of an eye. give someone a hand. This means to help someone. For example, if a friend needs assistance, you might say, I'll give you a hand with those bags. Or at work, you could say, can you give me a hand with this report? To go the extra mile. This means to make additional effort beyond what is expected. For example, if an employee works very hard, you might say, she always goes the extra mile for her clients. Or if you want to encourage someone, you could say, going the extra mile will set you apart. Here's our next one. Cut corners. This means to do something poorly in order to save time or money. For example, if a company reduces quality to save costs, you might say they cut corners during production. Or when giving advice, you could say, don't cut corners if you want great results. On cloud nine. On cloud nine. This means extremely happy. For example, after receiving some good news, you might say, she was on cloud nine after getting the job. Or after achieving a personal goal, you could say, he's been on cloud nine ever since he graduated. To keep an eye on. To keep an eye on. This means to watch or monitor something carefully. For example, if you're helping a friend, you might say, can you keep an eye on my bag? Or at work, you could say, I need to keep an eye on this project. Next expression, once in a blue moon. Once in a blue moon. This means very rarely. For example, if you hardly ever eat dessert, you might say, I eat sweets once in a blue moon. Or if you seldom see an old friend, you could say, we meet once in a blue moon. Call it a day. This means to stop working for the day. For example, after finishing your tasks, you might say, let's call it a day. Or when you're tired, you could say, we've done enough, let's call it a day. Finally, that rings a bell. This means something sounds familiar. For example, if you recognize a name but can't remember the details, you might say, that name rings a bell. Or if you've heard something before, you could say, that story rings a bell. Start using a few of these today in your own sentences, and you'll sound more natural and fluent right away. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to see my next lesson. Until next time, take care.